I'm like, why do diets, how come I keep failing on diets? And it just hit me on the bike one day. It's like, oh my gosh, it's not us that are failing on the diet. The diet is failing us because diets aren't designed to make you feel better, to lift you up, to enhance your mood. Diets are really stressful. They're not fun. And so that just really got me thinking. I'm like, you know what? Everybody knows what they should be doing. And I've heard this from so many people that they literally say, I know what I need to do. I just need to do it. And so that is the essence of Interrupt Hunger. We're going to try to help on the doing part. So we really focused on behavioral science to figure out how we do that.
Welcome to episode 24 of the Eat Your Greens with Dr. Black podcast. If you're like many of my listeners, you're ready to start getting healthier, and you may even have a good idea of what you need to do, but you just need a little motivation to get started. If that describes you, then this episode is for you. Today, I'm sitting down with fellow Texan Bill Jollie, who just generally goes by Jollie. He's the founder of a nonprofit called Interrupt Hunger that has a unique approach to personal health and fitness. He and I actually have quite a bit in common. Our oldest daughters are both named Katie, although mine's actually Catherine, but she went by Katie for the first 6 years of her life until she made us stop calling her that. But anyways, our oldest daughters are named Katie. They're both seniors at Texas State University here in San Marcos, and we both live in the beautiful hill country of Texas. We also both share a passion for supporting people who are struggling with overweight or obesity. And we both feel called to help our neighbors struggling with food insecurity. And finally, we share this drive to cultivate a culture of health in our community. So we're going to talk about all of those passions that Jollie and I share, and we're going to have a great conversation. So Jollie was not content to just sit back and do nothing about these issues that he sees in the community. And he found an innovative way to join two seemingly opposite problems. On the one hand, there's obesity, and on the other hand, there's food insecurity. And he came up with a grassroots endeavor to promote the health and vitality of people struggling with both of these issues. He is committed to solving problems and helping those in need, and he is giving us all a way to not only jumpstart our own health, but also to give back to our neighbors at the same time. So I know that you're going to find this episode to be just as inspiring to listen to as I did to record. A quick reminder, please take a few seconds to subscribe to the show, rate it, leave a review. All these little things take very little time on your part, but they make a big difference to me. And so thank you for supporting the Eat Your Greens podcast by doing that. All right, let's get into my conversation with Jollie. So thanks for taking the time to talk to me today. I have really enjoyed getting to know you over the last few months and discussing and exploring all the ways that we can support people, not only in their personal health journey, but also in supporting the health of the community at large. So just give me a little background, your backstory about how you came to start this Interrupt Hunger nonprofit.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Dr. Black. Thanks for having me on your podcast. First, I got to tell you, I have thoroughly enjoyed listening to your podcast. I think all but maybe two of the episodes that you put out, I've listened to, and I don't have a lot of letters behind my name. I'm not a licensed practitioner. I'm just a guy. But in the last 12 years, I've been digging into health and nutrition and exercise a lot. And on your podcast, I've learned so much.
Thanks.
So thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Thanks for those kind words.
So all this started, I'll give you the quick rundown, how we got to Interrupt Hunger. So a long time ago, I'm 52 now. I was in the Marine Corps, 6 years, amazing shape, like you might expect. And then when I got out, I did what a lot of Marines do, unfortunately, and we get lazy. We just spent the last 6 years, getting up at 3:30 in the morning and working out. I got lazy, and I was lazy and ate really poorly for 15 years. And then so May of 2011, a buddy convinced me to do a triathlon with him. And that triathlon saved my life because I love telling the story. He asked me to train with him for a sprint triathlon. So this is May. The triathlon was in the end of September that same year. And a sprint triathlon, for folks that haven't done it, it's like a baby triathlon. It's like the smallest one. I remember saying, like, I can't do a triathlon. He's like, shut up, you're a jarhead. You're going to do this with me. And if not for that triathlon, it could have been years before I got diagnosed with a type of leukemia called chronic lymphocytic leukemia, or CLL. And so as the training progresses, I do 5 laps in the pool, and I'm so just thoroughly exhausted. I had to hold on to the side of the pool, and I'm like, okay, like I know I'm out of shape, but I shouldn't be this tired. And then as the training progressed, I developed something that felt like chest congestion. My X-ray scans of my chest were clear. Doc gave me albuterol inhaler, and then that didn't work. Of course, one thing led to another. Got a CT scan a few weeks later. Had lymph nodes, enlarged lymph nodes all over my body, above the diaphragm, below, left and right side. My largest lymph node was pressing against my airway, causing the wheeze. So I actually got the diagnosis on Pearl Harbor Day, which is kind of fitting, December 7th, 2011. And the reason why I say this triathlon saved my life is because this is an indolent leukemia. It takes years. It's very, very slow growing. And during those years, it can mutate. And if you catch it early, you're good because we've got some great medications out. But if it goes too long, it can mutate, and then you get into some trouble. I started, I think, 5 weeks later, chemotherapy, traditional chemotherapy, 6 rounds. And that started early January. And I remember I don't know if it was the first infusion, they take 2 days and it's a really long time. You're sitting in the chair for a while. But I remember thinking, I'm like, why did I do this to myself? Why did I let myself get this out of shape? Just because you're out of shape doesn't mean you're going to get cancer, but, risks and whatnot. And so I started thinking, I'm like, you know what? It wasn't just me that I knew, but I had some family friends and family members who let themselves go and then had a serious health scare, heart attack and cancer and stroke and all these different things. And it was enough to turn their life around and start taking care of themselves, eating better and exercising. And I'm like, man, like it shouldn't take fear for us to motivate us to start taking care of ourselves. There's got to be something more. And it just hit me one day. It hopefully doesn't sound too cheesy, but it's compassion. It's love, the greatest force in the entire universe. And I'm like, wow, what if we can use love and compassion to motivate us instead of fear to help us change our lives? And that was the initial spark for Interrupt Hunger. And then I quickly learned there's 2 opposite ends of the hunger spectrum. On one spectrum, we can see it every single day. 73% of Americans have overweight or obesity. That's easy to see. But on the other end of the spectrum, food insecurity, that type of hunger is very, very hard to see unless you're intentional about looking at it or it's happened to you. Most of the time, you can't look at somebody and say they're food insecure. So right now, if the economy is good or not, it fluctuates a lot, but about 12% of Americans right now have food insecurity. And I figure, why don't we tackle both at the same time? So that's where it came from.
Yeah, that's amazing. So there just has to be a better way, right? We shouldn't wait until we're literally dying or have a near-death experience or a significant health scare. What if there's a better way? And so that's your whole paradigm for your program is let's take 2 seemingly opposite issues, right? There's obesity on the one hand, and there's food insecurity on the other hand, and tie them together in a way that helps everybody benefit. So you mentioned that food insecurity can be a hidden problem. You can't really just tell by looking. And so on the one hand, we have the rising rates of obesity and people who want to take steps to lose weight in order to improve their health. And on the other hand, we have food insecurity, which you would imagine that people who are food insecure are going to be maybe very thin. Like you think you should be able to just look and see that somebody is not eating regularly. But this isn't really the case. These are actually very closely related health issues. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, they're actually very closely related, and it surprises a few folks because you hear that, you're like, wait a minute, I don't understand. And so we know that the biggest driver of overweight and obesity is poor nutrition, and it really comes down to ultra processed foods. If you think about the environment that we're in, we are completely surrounded by ultra processed foods. We see it on TV, the radio, billboards, the characters. It's directed at kids. Unfortunately, a lot of the times kids see it, they want it, it tastes good, and so they eat it. The other thing about ultra processed foods, though, they are really, really cheap to make, cheap to sell. And, if you're on a very, very limited budget, you get what you can afford. If it's just you, or if it's you and your partner or spouse, or if it's you and your kids, you need to do everything you can to scrape together what you can. And unfortunately, you can't be too picky a lot of the times. So the other component of this that a lot of folks don't understand is one of the reasons why we overeat, one of the reasons why we are so drawn to ultra processed foods. I like to say ultra processed foods really hack our system. They're fighting against us. They're designed to make us want to crave more and eat it quicker. And so if you think about stress and when you're craving those really, really high sugar, high carb, calorie dense items, it's when you're most stressed. And who is the most stressed in our country? Folks that are food insecure. You could go down the entire list of social determinants of health. And if you think about, again, two spectrums, I like looking at opposite ends of the spectrum to figure out a stance on something. So on one hand, you have somebody that is really living the American dream. They're maybe highly educated. They have a good job. They're making money. They live in a nice house. They drive a nice car. Things are easier for them. On the other end of the spectrum, if you start adding up all these social determinants of health, it gets harder and harder. Think of just like a weight that's on your shoulders, and every time you pile up, person of color, you didn't graduate high school, maybe you did, maybe no college, maybe you have an hourly wage, you would like a better job, but you can't find one. Maybe you had some type of health tragedy and it's caused financial difficulty. I mean, there's so many different causes of stress. You can, I'm sure your listeners can imagine, you pile on 3 or 4 or 5 of these social determinants of health, and it just weighs you down, and you can't fight back against the cravings that ultra processed foods cause. And so you eat what you can afford, and you eat what stress and your life situations are causing you. And so this is not, I have been very careful to learn how to not let my judgment, my biases, stigmas influence how we see people. And I didn't grow up that way. It's taken a long time to learn. And if you're not there yet, I'm not going to judge you because it's a process. But just like anything you want to get better at, we can get better at understanding how our bodies work, understanding what folks with food insecurity are going through. And it's not, I'll just say this. We live in Texas. Texas is probably best known out of all 50 states for really independence and, pulling yourself up by the bootstrap. That is not the way to look at poverty and food insecurity in any way.
I love all of the points you just made and just how complex the issue is. It's not just not having money. It's so many factors that go into that. Stress. A big factor that I've come across is also transportation. So here in Texas, the other thing that we don't do a great job at in many areas is public transportation. And, if you live in a food desert is, there's not in a reasonable radius of distance, there's not a grocery store or a farmer's market or someplace that has a good variety of healthy food. But you know what there is? There's plenty of convenience stores, gas stations, Dollar Generals or Family Dollars, those kind of stores. They're all over the place, but they're not going to have those healthy fruits, vegetables, whole foods. They just mostly stock processed snacks. And even if you maybe have the budget to afford reasonably healthy food, if you don't have access to transportation, if you don't have a functioning car, you're not going to be able to get to that food. So transportation is another one of those many factors that can contribute to food insecurity and paradoxically related obesity, because that's the only kind of food you have access to. And you're right, those processed foods are designed to make you want to keep eating them. You don't feel full, and they release that flood of dopamine. I've said this on other episodes. My listeners know, broccoli just does not release the same amount of dopamine in our brain to make us crave it, it's just evolution and human nature, but there it is. And so all of these factors contribute. And so I agree, we have to do away with some of our old notions, our misconceptions about what food insecurity looks like, and really look at our cities and our areas just south of Austin. Austin is now one of the most affluent cities in the United States. The real estate costs, the cost of living is up there with places like New York City, Seattle. And so we have these super wealthy people right there in Austin, and just, 15 to 30 miles outside of Austin, pretty much a suburb, we have Del Valley, which is a food desert. There's not a grocery store there, and there's no bus lines really going there. It's very difficult to access healthy food if you don't have really good transportation. Texas is a big state, so you have to be able to drive, quite a ways just to get to a local grocery store. So all of these things come together to create this growing issue in our communities. And these are our neighbors, and they may be in your neighborhood. I have heard you say the statistic, and I've heard it from other people, that there is not a single zip code in the entire United States that is not affected by food insecurity. Even the most wealthy, affluent areas in our country, it's there.
So I live in Bernie, Texas. We're 45 minutes northwest of San Antonio. Kind of when we first moved here, we were just outside suburbia, and with growth, we're right on the edge now. Texas Hill Country is absolutely beautiful. So Bernie is seen as a more affluent small town, somewhere over 20,000 people. I don't know exactly, but it's more affluent, more or higher proportion of folks have higher education. The housing is more expensive. Income is higher. So folks see Bernie as more affluent, generally speaking. But at the same time, in Bernie, this more affluent area, we've got 12 campuses in our school district, just under 11,000 students at last count. Our incidence of food insecurity, so folk or kids that are on the free or reduced lunch program, somewhere right around 20.4%. So even in a more affluent town, whether it's Bernie, whether it's Austin, portions of San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth, wherever in the country, just because you're in a more affluent area does not mean that food insecurity and poverty doesn't exist. And I can tell you locally, one of the reasons that happens, transportation is an issue. Food, the really good food, produce, fruits, vegetables, whole foods, those are more expensive. But also, if you're in a more affluent area, the cost of living is more expensive. So that makes it that much harder. And if you're thinking about, you might have this vision of what a food insecure person looks like. And so I got to tell you, you got to just block that out, because that is one single maybe vision. We've got folks that with two incomes that are still food insecure and need help from food banks and food pantries. A lot of our vets, San Antonio, our tagline's Mission City, USA. There are an enormous amount of vets who are food insecure. There's an enormous amount of our elderly folks who are food insecure. It's not just one person.
Exactly. Now, tell me a little bit so we have food insecurity on one end, and then your program, Interrupt Hunger, has the tagline, Move, Eat, Give, and you're using that to help people with their own personal weight loss goals. So tell me, how does your program motivate people to change their habits and get healthy in a way that supports our neighbors with food insecurity?
Yeah, thanks. So Move, Eat, Give. Tried to distill it down to the most basic behaviors that we do. So Interrupt Hunger helps you lose weight while feeding the hungry. I have this belief that there's virtually no problem in America that can't be solved by taking better care of ourselves and better care of each other. So
I want you to just repeat that, because I love that. Just say that again.
Yeah, thanks. So there's no problem that can't be fixed in this country if we took better care of ourselves and took better care of each other.
Hear, hear. I love that. And so you're using your program to help people do just that.
Yeah.
How do they do that?
Yeah. So I was on my bike several years ago. I was a cyclist and still do triathlons and whatnot. And I remember thinking like, why? Because I've tried lots of different diets and eating styles. I was the heaviest kid in my sixth grade class, and I didn't really start getting into shape until I decided to join the Marine Corps. So if I'm not exercising, I'm gaining weight. And so Atkins back in the day, I've tried low carb, high fat, and all kind of different things. I'm like, why do diets? What, how come I keep failing on diets? And it just hit me on the bike one day. It's like, oh my gosh, it's not us that are failing on the diet. The diet is failing us because diets aren't designed to make you feel better, to lift you up, to enhance your mood. Diets are really stressful. They're not fun. And so that just really got me thinking. I'm like, you know what? Everybody knows what they should be doing. And I've heard this from so many people that they literally say, I know what I need to do. I just need to do it. And so that is the essence of Interrupt Hunger. We're going to try to help on the doing part. So we really focused on behavioral science to figure out how we do that. So with Interrupt Hunger, the moving part, we form teams. You use compassion and community to keep you motivated long enough for you to develop healthy habits. So everybody knows you should be walking. Sometimes, it's hard to change behavior. You've heard it said that changing somebody's habits is the hardest thing you could possibly do. It really is hard. Our brain is a habit creating machine. And so to change those habits, it's really hard. So you need some other motivating factors like community and that accountability. Your friend or your church member or your neighbor is going to be meeting you, say at 6:45 in the morning or 5:45 at night. You're like, oh, I need to go meet them because I don't want to let them down. So you form a team. Maybe it's 3 people, maybe it's 30 people. It's totally free, and you just agree on a time and day to meet. And so we have this movie give workshop. It's super, super easy. These are just basic habit creating ideas. So we've got 1 week on here, Monday through Sunday. The first step is to write that time, that weekly team exercise on your calendar. Take 20 minutes by yourself and just fill out the rest of the week by yourself. You got to be intentional about it. So whatever life, your schedule, figure out what's going to be best for you. And then the second part of that is figure out what you like, because if you don't like it, you're not going to stick with it. There's plenty of evidence there. And if you really don't know what to do, just walk. Write down your team exercise in 4 other days to get you that 150 minutes a week that's recommended. So that's the first step.
So that's move. And
that's the move.
Yeah, you're right. The best exercise is the one you're going to do, and make a team so you can hold each other accountable. And then the eat part is, so you don't actually give dietary advice on your, you're not telling people this is like, it's not the Jollie weight loss diet.
Nope. All I'm trying to do is get folks to break the myths and the perceptions of what it's going to take. There's so much false information out there. And sometimes folks on social media have really good intentions. They're just giving out the wrong information. This is like, think about how folks used to live like 2 and 3 generations ago. All those old time movies that we grew up watching, like that's the way we need to get back to. So we're going to walk. And then eating is pretty much you do away with ultra processed foods, reduce those as much as you can, reduce sugar as much as you can. The number one driver in the entire country for overweight and obesity is sugar sweetened beverages. In Texas and the South, we love sweet tea. You couldn't imagine how much sugar is in a sweet tea, and sodas, of course. So there's a couple really neat things you can do. One, we've got a space for there's 30 boxes on our movie give worksheet. And again, sit down by yourself or maybe your family and be intentional about this and write down what kind of healthy foods you like. Because we all know the most difficult part of our family's life is figuring out what to eat for dinner. Like, it's not an exaggeration. I know it's like that for a lot of folks. So what do you like? What does your family like? And have that on hand, whether it's Instacart, whether you go, we all love our HEB grocery stores in Texas. They've got fantastic produce. Stick to the perimeters of the grocery store. We've all heard this. The ultra processed food has the tendency of being in the middle. So stick to outside of the grocery stores. But write down what kind of foods you like to eat. Have those on hand. Also, what kind of snacks do you like? Because a lot of our calories come between meals, the high density, the high sugar, the high carb. So what kind of snacks do you like? And write those down and make sure you have those on hand all the time at home and in the office, at work. You got to change your environment. So this sounds kind of silly, but if you want to change your life, you actually have to change your life. And a lot of people don't get that. You can't just make like tiny little changes and expect like really big things to happen. This is hard. And you gotta change a lot about your life because unfortunately there's a lot of our life that causes these health problems. So change your environment and something as simple as don't put ultra processed foods where you can see it. Like if I want to have a cookie, I'm going to eat it out of the house. If I want to have ice cream or a snack, I eat it out of the house because if I bring it in the house and there's leftovers, then, when that stress hits, then I'm going to eat that. Right. Yeah. So, and then the third thing that I think is a really probably the most impactful part of this whole thing. If you're a parent, it's even more impactful. And I dare you to do this, and it's going to change the way you look at life. I promise you. I want you to write a diary of what your kid is eating. Just do it for 4 days, like 3, 4, 5 days. Just write down what they ate. Maybe it was a snack. And then the hard part of this is turning that over, look at the ingredient list, and write down every chemical in there that you don't know what it is.
Which is most of the things on the ingredient list often.
If it has over 4 or 5 ingredients on there, it's ultra processed food. If it's in a wrapper, it's ultra processed food. If it makes any kind of claims on the front of the package, it's an ultra processed food. I'm going to tell you as a parent, we can, like, yeah, I'm a little overweight. Yeah, I'm a little out of shape. But when it comes to your kid, it's a pretty powerful motivator to change things. So I promise you, once you do that, you will not look at life the same.
And as a pediatrician, I can second all of that. I'll tell you, and I've said this numerous times over my career, I have never yet met a parent who didn't genuinely want the best for their child. Now, we all come at parenting from different backgrounds and different, stress levels, and we don't get it right all the time, but I guarantee you that everybody has the intention of getting it right. And when you really think about your child's health, it's a great motivator also for your own health. And that's a big part of why I do what I do, because, parents really want to know, like, how can I give my child the best life and health possible?
Yep.
It's great.
I love that. And so the last part of Interrupt Hunger Weight Loss Challenge is our Donate Your Weight program. And that's when the giving back part of it kicks in. So there's 2 ways. You meet once a week as a group, once a month, or once even during the entire 12-week program. Maybe it's the last week. We suggest that you donate your time and go volunteer, like at a food bank or a local food pantry. Food banks, real quick, are the really, really massive warehouses. Feeding America is the largest, the nation's largest food network in the country. They cover every single zip code in the entire country, including Alaska and Hawaii. So these massive food banks, they usually cover multiple counties. Like San Antonio Food Bank, I think they cover like 17 counties in Texas. And then so they ship food to food pantries and soup kitchens. So, there's going to be one close to you. Just call them up and say, hey, I want to volunteer. Maybe it's one time. You do it with friends and it's really fun. As your team, you're going to exercise once a week. Your team goes and volunteers together. And that's a fantastic way to build relationships and get to know people when you're volunteering. And so the final part about that, the Donate Your Weight program, we want you to celebrate your weight loss victories. It's not all about weight loss. It's getting healthy, but our program is set up for Donate Your Weight. So say we recommend donating at least $1 for every pound you lose to help fight hunger. If you lose 5 pounds in a month, then donate $5. If you want to donate $50, that's great too. So 100% of proceeds that you donate through us go to the food bank that you select. If it's not on there, you can reach out to us and we can add one. It's a way to give back and it's a way to like reward yourself. It's a way to know that you're doing good because you are quite literally helping to feed your hungry neighbors. And that feels really, really good.
That's amazing. And I really appreciate how you've set it up to address those key elements that help with habit change. So you said it's more of a behavior change. It's a way to motivate people to do the things they already know that are important parts of being healthy. I just wonder, did you ever read the book Atomic Habits? Are you familiar with that?
Yes,
Yeah,
I
I'm not
have.
really a
Very familiar with
self-help kind of book reader,
it.
but I did read that one and I found it really like he just distills it down and you really have hit many of his four like laws of habit change are make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy and make it satisfying. And you're doing all of that because you've got some workbooks, you said a checklist on your website so that it's easy for people to see what they need to do. You make it attractive by joining a team and you have accountability with your teammates. You've made it super easy to do all of these things. And then it's satisfying because not only are you helping your own personal health journey, but you are helping people in your community. And I think generosity is one of the most important human values. Like in my life, I have set an intention to practice generosity, and that can be your time, it can be finances, it can be energy. There's lots of ways to practice generosity, and you've really set up this program that allows you to do that, and also benefit your own personal health journey. So I just love everything about your Interrupt
It
Hunger, Eat,
works.
Move, Give framework. It's great.
Yeah, that's cool. Can I mention? So I tell you a really quick story. So I've been Methodist since seventh grade, and this is not just a Christian nonprofit. I don't care if you're Jewish, Muslim, whatever. We want you to come and join. So we are not overtly a Christian organization. Just to let folks know that are listening. If you are, that's great. If you're not, that's great too. I am, and I've heard the stories in the Bible for years and years and years. I'm very familiar with a lot of them. But one day I'm listening to a daily audio Bible podcast, goes through the Bible in the entire year. This one particular verse just really, really landed on me. It's Matthew 25:35, and I've actually got it tattooed on my arm. It says, "For I was hungry." ... That's my tattoo. And so when you're talking about generosity and giving back and why it feels so good, so the Bible's really, really thick, and Jesus again makes it really, really simple how to live and take care of yourselves. And this was really impactful for me. I'm not preaching here, but for me, and that's what I want to share real quick. So Matthew 25:35 starts out, "For I was hungry, you brought me something to eat. I was thirsty, you brought me something to drink. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. You were a stranger, you took me in. I was sick, you took care of me. I was in prison, you came to visit me." And his disciples said, "Truly, when did we do all this?" He goes through it and says, "Truly, whatever you do for the least of your brothers and sisters, you do for me." And so he's spelling it out. And for whatever reason, that one particular day, it like just really hit me. And I'm like, oh, crud. Like, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not helping feed the homeless. I'm not, I haven't clothed anybody. I had a sick friend that was really, really sick at the time. And I was being a really crappy friend by not going to visit him. And then I'd never visited anybody in prison. And it's not, you don't check those off just to say you've done it. But if you want to, again, you want to change your life, you have to change your life. And it's being intentional about giving back, about caring, about, loving your neighbor the way that you want to be loved. And it just feels good. It breaks down like so many walls and barriers. It just makes life so much simpler. And you start to see people differently, because the last thing I'll say right here is we helped some friends several years ago start up a homeless ministry. And so every other Saturday we would go downtown to the Oak City Outreach Center. And we would collect clothes during the week, and we talk to them, get to know them, coffee and just little things, but helping. And one of our friends was a pediatrician. And the first time we went down there, we were serving lunch to the homeless. He sees like the far table. There's one guy that was eating by himself. The pediatrician is a good 10 years older than me, so I have a special place in my heart for pediatricians. Y'all are pretty wonderful. And so he just goes, gets Dr. Hartman takes his plate, stands next to the guy, and says, "Hey, do you mind if I eat with you?" He's like, yeah, sure. And he just started talking to him. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's how simple it is. And that was really the process and getting to know him. They went from just, that's a homeless guy or lady or whatever. And then you learn their name and then you learn their story and it just changes your life. It really does.
Yeah, that's so true. And seeing people as fellow humans, really making that connection just breaks down so many barriers. And if you do the volunteering that the Interrupt Hunger program recommends and you go to your local food pantry, food shelter, and help with, I know from my previous podcast episode where I spoke with the executive director of the Hayes County Food Bank here, Lisa Young, how much they need those volunteers and to help distribute food on their distribution days or be the driver of the van to take it to the elderly or the disabled people who can't get to the food bank for the distribution. They really need that. And so that gives you that opportunity to make that personal connection with people in your community and see that really they're people just like you and they have their struggles, and it can really disperse a lot of that sense of other, of not me, and we are really all interconnected. I think that's a fundamental truth. And it seems like, we're separate and individual, but we're not. We are completely connected to each other, and being able to really feel that in your body, just do that volunteer work, connect with people. And it sounds selfish, like you're not really doing it for selfish reasons, but it's okay to say, you know what, this makes me feel good.
Yep.
And that is a valid reason to do it because, like you said, mental health issues are huge and we're all struggling. I think there's not anybody that's not affected to some degree to, some of the anxiety and angst that we have in our community. And so you're making yourself feel good. You're bolstering your own mental health and at the same time connecting with people, giving back. And then we tie it all together to your own personal health, making that the motivation to also eat healthy and lose weight if that's your goal. So that's amazing. Again, when I came across your website and listened to a podcast interview you did on a obesity medicine podcast, it just lit up so many light bulbs for me. And I thought, well, I really need to connect with this guy and look, at all the wonderful things. And it's just amazing.
And now we've become
And now
friends,
we're
which is
friends
cool.
and we're,
Yeah. The to date, we really started gearing up, and even though it's been a spark for a while in the last year or so, and we've already donated 15,000 meals
that's
around the
incredible.
country and here. It's amazing what food banks and food pantries can do with $1. It's I think on average $1 nationally provides 4 meals. So you mentioned the volunteer, the hours. Like that's one of the big reasons they can do so much with just $1. It's because they have just hundreds and thousands of volunteer hours. And then you get to know the people that are doing this for the job or there day in, day out. And it just really like break down your own walls and biases and stigmas and I call it like positive peer pressure.
Yeah, that's great.
The good, yeah. So yep.
And if weight loss is not your goal, I was brainstorming, like you could even donate, say, the number of days per month that you hit 10,000 or more steps, if you're just exercising, or the number of days per month you just worked out. I know for me, I wouldn't be donating much right now. My exercise routine has met some challenges this last month. You were talking about, life can throw things at you. And one of my favorite sayings is life has a life of its own. And so I was doing a great job of regular exercise, and then my schedule changed and I have to figure out how to get it back in there. But so number of days per month you work out, number of days per month you hit 10,000 steps, even things like number of days you met your nutritional goals. Maybe, you had a goal to, eat less than 3 servings of processed food or eat more than 5 servings of fruits and vegetables. One of my favorites that I'm going to throw out there because my listeners know I think fiber is so important is maybe you set a goal to get 30 grams of fiber a day, and you can donate $1 for every day that you hit your 30 grams of fiber per day goal. That's awesome. Everybody should do that. So, there's so
That's a
many
great
ways you
one.
can adapt this, and it doesn't just have to be weight loss if that's not your goal.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And we make it really easy at interrupthunger.org. You go on there. You don't have to join the team. If you just want to make a one-time donation, or just do it periodically, we make it really easy to donate.
And you
So
have a little shop of merchandise. I've got my Eat, Move, Give
I know.
bracelet. It's on and it's great. So you can buy some of their merch, and that the proceeds from that also go directly to feeding the hungry.
They do. Again, it's incredible what they can do. So with all of our merchandise, we've got some really neat gemstone bracelets, and then they have three silver beads on them for our Move, Eat, Give. I think they're pretty cool looking. But with any item that you purchase, we're going to donate 50 meals to the National Feed in America. We're not affiliated with them, but they're just the best and most efficient. So that's why we donate to them. But yeah, so you can look good while you feel good, or feel good while you look good.
Both. Let's talk about one more way that you are really working to promote health in the community, and that is your grassroots movement to make Bernie the healthiest small town in Texas. And I'm going to say right up front that you've laid down the gauntlet, and we're going to find ways to do this in San Marcos and have a little friendly competition. But I want to hear more about what you've been doing in Bernie to promote the health of the whole community.
Oh, that's fantastic, because it's working like I had hoped. We're going to start in Bernie. We're going to kind of build in public. You hear small businesses build in public. We've got a podcast called the Movie Give Podcast. We're going to put it on there. What we learned. Okay, so I've got three girls. They're 26, 22, and 6. Our youngest one's adopted. Inslee's going into first grade. And so I've been talking to folks. I've been learning about all these really neat community health initiatives going on all over the country. And it really made me think, like, why don't we start at the elementary school? Because schools are such a fantastic hub for communities. And like, what can we do to start changing the habits and changing the direction of our kids? Because I'm not saying it's too late for us, but we really want to get them started young. Because if you think, like, when Kelsey and Katie, 22 and 26, now we're young, we're Enz's age, recycling was really big. And so I would throw away a plastic bottle, and they would call me out. It's like, Dad, you can't throw that away. You got to recycle it. Well, guess what? Like, everybody, that's just part of life now. Everybody recycles, right? Well, what if we did the same thing for healthy living? And so my wife and I, Tracy, she's really involved in the PTO. I go up there and volunteer a lot. So I talked to the PE coach, and I gave him my idea about what if we start a monthly family fitness night? Really, really informal, super easy. Once a month, folks are going to meet after school, at like 5:30 or 6 o'clock, have loud music, map out a course, and just everybody comes. Our school, like a lot of schools, are really active, and folks just really love coming up there. We got community. You can meet some of your neighbors. You get your kids exercising, but they're going to be talking about it during the announcements. So the kids are going to know about it. So what's that mean? They're going to drag their parents along too. And so we're going to get to the parents through the kids. And so Coach Clark said, I need to talk to Principal Hammond. She loved the idea as well and told me to go talk to the athletic director for the Bernie Independent School District, Coach Leach, who is over PE. And he just really appreciated the idea as well and said, why don't you start at Bernie in September, blow it up, and try to make the other principals and PTOs jealous. And so that's exactly what we've started to do, and word is already spreading. So we're excited about this. We'll have our first one in a couple of months in September. What I figured out was that was really, really fun getting that done. Everybody was super supportive, and it was actually so much easier than I thought it was going to be. And so that kind of like put this spark in my head, and I had this crazy idea of like, what if we like really, really blew this up and didn't just stop at the schools, but what if we tried to make Bernie the healthiest small town in Texas? And I think that's kind of a catchy little jingle. And usually when a town or community tries to get folks healthier, they'll pass a bond, they'll build a park, they'll build bike lanes. I mean, I'm a cyclist. I love bike lanes, but those are really expensive, and the average citizen doesn't get involved with those at all. And so what can we do to activate the entire community? And when I say entire community, I mean it. And so let me just rattle off some ideas. And if you think about, if you're listening to, how Interrupt Hunger is set up, it's behavior change. It's habits. So we are living in an ultra processed food environment. It's everywhere. That's our environment. And so if you're going to change your life, you got to change your life. It's going to be hard, but everybody has been super supportive. So at the schools, don't just stop at the family fitness night, but a lot of schools have school gardens. And I've learned so much. My last podcast episode had Kelly Douglas from Oregon that won state awards by all the amazing work she did at her school garden. So with our podcast, we're going to create this Healthiest Small Town series where it's really a how-to guide of how to do this in your own town. And it's us learning on the fly. So we're going to really build up the school garden through PTO and newsletters, get parents involved, teach kids not just to exercise, but get them in the habit of understanding, like getting them close to dirt. Like dirt is really magical. When you watch a kid pull a carrot out of the ground and wash it off and eat it right there for the very first time, and they've never done that, like that is a really special thing. There's a new wave of coming across the country called food is medicine. There's a lot of different aspects of that. One of them is culinary medicine, and there's culinary instruction programs. The curricula is already built that folks can come and you can, you teach folks how to cook. So when I was talking about like, think about how they used to live in the olden times, walk. We don't walk due to, sedentary life because of technology. Learn to cook. Plant a garden in the backyard. Like these are really, really simple, basic things that everybody can do. Oh, one other thing that we can do at schools, I just learned about this. We haven't talked to the school district about. There's something called shared use. We've got some really fantastic things on campuses that most of the time are closed to the public. And if you think about tennis courts, those are closed to the public. A lot of times, most of the time, the track is closed to the public. And so if there's any city council members or school board members or just motivated parents listening, Texas does have in their education code a process for shared use where, the city and the school district can work together to utilize some of these great facilities to help increase the health of the public. So we've got, I mentioned cooking. We've got some just incredible independent restaurants in Boerne. And so what if we went to these restaurants and the chefs are fantastic. They have all this training and experience. Like, what if we used our chefs to teach our citizens how to cook? And I'm not talking about anything fancy, but like just really basics, like how to saute vegetables and how to create some marinades and how to add flavor, take away the salt because, we have a high sugar problem. We have a high sodium problem. Learn to, instead of using salt, use some herbs. And so there's really just basic things to change the way you cook and cook for yourself and teach your family in a big way. So let's move on to medical practices. So doctors, nurses, advanced practice practitioners, they have really big hearts and they've tried and sometimes get burned out trying to tell folks and their patients what they need to do. And so I think there's some easy things we can do to help close that gap. And so one of them that we've talked about is hunger as a vital sign. This is evidence-based, super easy. It's a 2-question questionnaire. It's basically like, when in the last few weeks did you ever not have enough money to pay for food? And the second part of that is, looking forward, are you worried that you won't have money to pay for food? You could put that into your EMR and, you could partner like you're doing at Corridor with your local food bank, a food pantry, to bring a tiny little food closet into your own practice. And I just think that's amazing what y'all are doing there in Corridor. So,
well, thanks for bringing that up. I don't think I've announced it yet on the podcast. And so this is a great opportunity to do so through my work connecting with our local food bank and talking to people like you and just identifying what a need there is. And so if you're a patient, if your children come to see us at Corridor Pediatrics in the near future, you're going to start seeing on the electronic check-in system 2 questions pop up. And that's the hunger vital sign questions that you just mentioned. So I know it's a pain to do all those questionnaires on the Freesia that every time and the developmental questionnaires. So yes, I added more for you, but it's just 2. It's really fast. And if you answer yes to either of those questions, Corridor Primary Care now has a small food pantry. We have partnered with the Hays County Food Bank. The bags of food are on the shelf. And if we see that you answered yes to those questions, we will address it with you. And we don't have to get any of your financial information. You don't have to qualify. All you have to do is tell us, that you're struggling to feed your family, and you will get a bag of food to take home that day. We will also give you the resources if you want to, or if you haven't yet applied for things like SNAP and TANF, or just to get regular distributions from the food bank. But families in our practice can get food once a week if they need it without having to worry about any sort of qualification. So yeah, we're just now launching that. I'm really proud of it. And, Corridor Pediatrics, they're so supportive, and such a great group of doctors. I love working there with my Corridor family. So yeah, thanks. And Jollie, you've been definitely instrumental in motivating me to do that. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, that's so cool. Makes me smile. I'm so proud of y'all, and you and your partners and your staff have such a big heart there at Corridor. So I think that's amazing. You mentioned SNAP, and so another thing that docs can do, and some doctor offices around the country are doing this. You can refer them to WIC and SNAP. Nationally, this is crazy. We've got these incredible programs, but nationally, 50% of those eligible for WIC, when if you don't know, WIC stands for Women, Infant, and Children. It's good for during pregnancy, but then also afterwards. And people think about it, maybe it's just for the infants, but it actually carries on for until the child is 5. 50% of those eligible nationally are not enrolled. It's not that high in Bernie, but it's a good chunk of folks. And then SNAP is really the biggest support system for food insecurity in the country. It's an incredible program. Just got extended in our latest farm bill, which is exciting. But about 20% of those eligible for SNAP nationally are not enrolled. So medical practices are in a unique spot to, if you do identify somebody, you don't have to do a lot of work. It doesn't take a lot. You just refer them to the local WIC, SNAP office, or the local food pantry.
And I would like to just say one thing about all of that. If you have, say you're a family and you've applied for SNAP, TANF, and WIC, if you don't meet the financial qualifications, maybe you earn just a little bit too much money, the qualifications to get regular food distributions from the food bank are not as strict. So people might not have, gone to their food bank to get food regularly because they think they won't qualify, but the income cutoffs are higher. So even if you don't qualify for SNAP, TANF, or WIC, you may still qualify for help from the food bank. So don't give up.
That's a very good point. Yep. I love that. So similarly to hunger as a vital sign, there's physical activity as a vital sign. Same thing, 2 questionnaire that you can put in your EMR. You can ask on intake. An MA can do it, or you can do it beforehand. It's just like going to the dentist. If you're going to get your teeth cleaned, the hygienist is going to ask you things that you're dreading. Like, they're going to ask you, are you flossing? And you're going to lie because, we don't floss as much as we should. But then they ask, like, how often, how many times a week? Same thing. In the last 4 weeks, on average, how many days a week do you exercise? And then you tell them. And then the second question is, okay, on average, how many minutes per day? And then you can put that into your chart. Any healthcare practitioner listening right now, you can do this. Start it tomorrow. And so by doing that, you're going to improve their motivation to exercise. There's something called an exercise prescription. You can just write on there, walk 30 minutes a day, 5 times a week. If you can only start with 10 minutes, walk 10 minutes. If it's only 20 minutes and it's simpler, the better. If you're overcomplicating your exercise, you are doing it wrong because you're going to be miserable. You're going to get stressed out. You're not going to do it right. And you're going to quit. Do things you love, do things that fit into your schedule. Yeah. So these are the kind of things that we're looking at. A couple other things, just really, really easy. Think about all the stairs in your town. Like, most people don't take the stairs. I am very frequently the only person I see on the stairs. So it's like, what if we had like posters next to every elevator, like with something little funny and catchy, pointing the direction to the stairs? There's so many like tiny little things we can do to get more physical activity and get healthier nutrition. And that's the reason why we have 73% overweight and obesity right now. It's because all those tiny little things, all those minutes of physical activity, you don't have to do it all in the morning. You can spread it out and have like tiny little exercise snacks. Like, technology has taken those away, those opportunities away from us. Like, we don't even spend time burning calories walking around the grocery store anymore because you can do it on Instacart. And so I might be
guilty of that. The curbside queen.
Yeah. So we're just looking at every possible way, the low hanging fruit of healthy community initiatives that don't cost a lot that we can enact right away and get as many residents involved as possible.
Yes, and just like your what you eat, the best form of exercise is the one that you can and will do. So it's not doesn't have to be that hard. Just any
That's
little if
right.
it's in your chair, whatever. Well, this has been a really great conversation. I think my listeners are going to really benefit, and I hope it motivates everybody just to start making those changes. They can access all of this at your website, right?
Yeah.
Interrupthunger.org. Um, where else can we find you, Jolly, if we want to reach out and communicate with you?
Yes. So we've got a new podcast called Move Eat Give. That's our motto, Move Eat Give by Interrupt Hunger. You can find us on YouTube or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. We're there. We've got 6 episodes in, so we're still new. We're still figuring it out, but the messages that we're getting are really, really neat. And we've had some amazing guests. And also I'm really, really active on LinkedIn, but we're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. You can find us at Interrupt Hunger is our handle. Please, if you have any questions at all, reach out to me by email. It's Jollie, Jollie, Jollie at interrupthunger.org. And I love talking about this stuff. This is a lot of fun.
And I'll put links to all of that in the show notes on my website so my listeners can find them and reach out to you, form a team, and start helping yourself and helping your neighbors. That's great. Well,
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, I'd love coming to visit too. So if you're looking for a speaker or whatever, just, somebody to come and talk to you, whether it's local or wherever, then, hit me up. Love to talk.
great. Thanks again. I am so happy that we were able to connect.
Thank you so much for having me on, Dr. Black.
Yeah,
It's been fun.
My pleasure. Thanks for listening in to my conversation with Jollie from Interrupt Hunger. One of the most effective ways known to successfully change habits, especially those tricky ones related to things like quitting smoking, drinking, or changing our diet, is community. Find a group, find a tribe, whatever. Find people with the same goals as you, and you will be so much more successful in whatever it is you're trying to do. Your takeaway from this episode is that helping others not only makes them feel good, but it makes you feel good too. And it can be a strong motivator to help you achieve your goals. As Jollie said, almost all of the world's problems can be solved if we take better care of ourselves and better care of others. So get together with your friends, your coworkers, your local school, whoever. Go to interrupthunger.org and start a team. Talk to the leaders in your community about how you can make your town the healthiest small or big, it doesn't matter, town in wherever you live. I know I'll be reaching out to city and school officials here in San Marcos to see what we can do. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to eat your greens. Please be aware that this podcast provides general health information about nutrition and feeding of infants and children and is meant for educational purposes only. It's not intended to replace the important relationship between a parent, child, and pediatrician. If you have concerns about your child's nutrition, health, or growth, please consult your doctor.